Hello, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Live. Today it is September 19th, and the fall equinox is upon us. It won't be long now. The days are shortening, the nights are lengthening, and this means that plants are starting to withdraw their nutrients back into their roots or their bark and stems and letting go of the things that they don't want to hold on to all winter, like their seeds. And this is phenomenon happens every fall as plants are preparing for the winter. And so today, instead of talking about flower power, we'll be talking about root power. My name's Allison from the Well Cultivated Life, and thanks for joining me here for this special edition Root Power show that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So, this week, like I said, in the Northern Hemisphere, we're going to be going crossing over the equinox and changing into the darker time of the year. And nature follows along with the seasons and takes its cue from the day length. And when that happens, this is when the plants are triggered to really start kind of hunkering down and getting ready for the dormant season. And for the next 6 weeks, the next until the next sort of what's called the cross quarter, this halfway point between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, these next 6 weeks is the perfect time for us as herbalists or harvesters or wild harvesters or foragers or whatever you might be to go out and finish up our harvest for the year. And like I said, this is a perfect time to harvest roots. Now, if you're watching my show, you're probably interested in healing plants, or you might be a gardener and you want to grow some more things. And, I have been a plant person my whole life. I remember eating a dirt clod sitting in my parents' vegetable garden. But even with getting started here and there years ago, working with herbs, it wasn't until I actually dug up a root to use. I remember the moment digging up a root and thinking, wow, I'm really an herbalist now. I'm actually not just snipping off some pretty little peppermint. I'm actually harvesting some roots. So that's why I wanted to share this with you today. Perhaps you are ready for this next level of herbalism yourself. You're going to need a good shovel and go out and do some digging. Now, why are we talking about roots now? Well, in the middle of summer, when plants are growing vigorously and they're flowering and they're putting out all their leaves, all of their energy and resources is being shunted up into the what we call the above ground parts of the plants, into the aerial parts. And so the roots themselves are working very hard to continue moving water and nutrients in from the soil. And they're not necessarily packed full of as much nourishment because most of it is up in the upper part of the plants. So it's really not the best time to harvest roots. But now, as the tops begin to die back on the plants, um, their energy, well, summer's going to go into seeds. So it's another good time of year this is also a good time of year to look at medicinal seeds that we might be harvesting. And the nutrients are going to be reclaimed. When leaves turn color and drop off, that's after a lot of the critical nutrition has been withdrawn back into the permanent parts of the plant, say in a maple tree or something like that. So when this happens, of course, that means that the roots are now storing sugars and other types of compounds that we can take advantage of for using for our own health. Now, before I get too much into harvesting roots, I just want to remind you that when you harvest a root, of course, you no longer have a plant. So when you are harvesting roots, you definitely want to be mindful that you're not going to dig up the whole plant. And I'm going to highly discourage you from wild harvesting anything that requires you to dig up the entire plant. Many plants are in jeopardy of survival because of overharvesting in the wild. So mostly I'm talking about what I'm going to share with you today are your common weeds that we don't have to worry about overharvesting because there's plenty of those around. And when you begin to follow, really looking at the plants and how they go through their seasonal life cycle, it allows you to really take advantage of when different parts of the plants are ready for harvest so that you can create a whole, basically, home medicine chest for yourself. And so, what I want to talk about today is a few things to be looking for wild harvesting right now. But mostly, I'm going to focus on the plants that you might need for winter health. And there are many roots that we use, but today I'll just talk about the ones for winter health. I will be doing a couple more roots coming up in my next couple of shows, roots that have a different use other than kind of winter health. So, what do we need when we want? What kind of support do we need in the winter that's different than we might need the rest of the year? Well, first of all, we're going to need respiratory support for kinds of acute conditions, coughs and colds or bronchitis. And a lot of times, because it gets so dry in the winter, we also need people that have asthma or those sorts of conditions can have a worse time because it's so dry. So we need support for our lungs. We also need generalized immune support. And while truthfully most herbalists would probably tell you that medicinal mushrooms are the best immune support, there are a couple of plants that can be used for immune support as well. And then the third one is really lymphatic support. So if you're not familiar, our lymph system is a whole system that kind of runs sort of parallel to our circulatory system. And its job is to grab all of the kind of the waste products that our body produces, pull it out of the bloodstream, and help to eliminate it. And when we get sick, a lot of times our glands will get swollen up, and that's because the glands are filling up with these waste products. So the better we can keep our lymph moving these things out, the sooner we'll start to feel better. We get the toxins out of our system. So there are a few seeds I just want to mention, and then I'm mostly going to talk about different roots that we can collect. So fennel and dill are both collectible this time of year, and both of those are really thought more of like a digestive health, but they do have some affinity for the respiratory system as well. And so I usually put fennel into all of my cough syrups that I make, and it does have a nice flavor. Dill is considered um, very mild and good for working with kids. And then a couple other things, of course, elderberries are the big immune support that we are all familiar with. And a little bit of elderberry syrup each day is not a bad idea. However, I'm not sure where you live, but where I am, the elderberry harvest has pretty much come to an end. So hopefully you got out and collected some elderberries. If not, I highly recommend that you go to your local herb store and get some elderberries and make your own syrup. You'll save a lot of money that way. And of course, another great thing that you can harvest this time of year is hawthorn berries. They are generally thought of as for the heart remedy, but they can help to sort of stimulate your digestion and help with chapped skin, which is another sort of winter ailment that we have. So if you have hawthorns growing where you are, definitely check and see if there's any berries still left on the tree and grab those. Now, I want to share some slides with you and just talk about a few of these uh, plants that I love to use during the winter that are really important for me. So this is Angelica, and of course, this is the um, plant when it's in bloom, and this is not when you would be harvesting the roots. In fact, by the time Angelica goes to seed like this, uh, it's going to complete its life cycle. Here's some seeds. You can collect the Angelica seeds. You can collect the Angelica um, stems. And then these are the roots on the left side. And now the Angelica roots are really great for the lymph system. also for the lung, and they can be helpful with digestion as well. So angelica is a wonderful plant to have. It's one of my favorite herbal allies. Next, we have comfrey, and I actually harvested a little bit of comfrey here I have on my table. Again, you're not going to harvest it when it's green and luscious like this. You're going to wait until the tops die back, and then you're going to pull up the roots. Comfrey has notoriously deep roots, and it is well known. A lot of times, these plants that have this big leaves like this, such as mullein, are known for helping with lung issues. So, comfrey is not something you would take as a tonic. You would only take it in an acute situation. And you can use the roots or you can use the leaves for comfrey as well. Of course, we have the famous echinacea, and I did a show on echinacea earlier this year. I'll put the link down in the description of this video on YouTube. And the echinacea is a well-known sort of immune stimulant, even though it was kind of touted as, the herb for colds. It has more of a detoxifying effect. So again, when we're sick, we need help detoxing and moving things out of our body, and so this echinacea can help with our lymph system and helping us detox from illness. This is elecampane, which is not a plant that a lot of people use a lot. It's more popular in Europe, but it's a very tall, beautiful plant. Again, it's got the big wide leaves on it, so it is indicated for lung conditions. And what elecampane is so good for is for, like, if you have tons of mucus, especially that yellow green mucus, and the root is inula. It's got a lot of inulin in it, which is that substance which helps to feed our microbiome. So it's also good for our digestion as well. And of course, as I forgot to mention, so today, because we are returning to the wheel of the year, burdock is actually our card of the day, and that is what made me think to do roots. I've done a show on burdock last year, and so but it did come up again for fall equinox, and so I wanted to share it with you. Now, burdock is a awesome plant for the lymph system, the liver system, just kind of stimulating everything. It's one of these almost tonic type of plants that could be taken just about every day. My favorite way to take it is to use it in place of black tea in a chai blend. So that's a great way to take it. Usually it's taken as a tea. It could be made into a tincture as well. And of course, burdock and its infamous seed pods. The seeds themselves can also be collected, and they are a diuretic and a very strong one. And so if you get a couple stuck on you as you're out going through the pasture or whatever, you just go ahead and bring them on home and save them in case you need them later on. And of course, our honorable mention, who can forget our lovely dandelion and our yellow dock? These are not necessarily roots that we were going to be using for winter health, but they are good for digestive health in many ways. And frankly, a sluggish digestion is not going to make you feel good. And if you're ill in the winter, you definitely want to be moving everything out. And these two plants are also very good as well. So the trick to all this is that what we want to do is we want to locate these plants right now so that when the tops do die back, we know where they are and can we easily go out and dig them up. Now, the two ways, so a couple things about roots. So here's a comfrey root, and a couple of tips for harvesting roots. Number one, clean, process, and chop them up immediately, because when they start to dry out, they become very difficult to chop up. And some are worse than others, but in general, this is really important when you're working with roots. So you want to clean them off really well. You want to get as much dirt off of them as possible. And then normally we'll either make an alcohol extract, and which is basically just putting them into alcohol for 6 weeks and extracting all the goodies out of them. Or we can make a water extract. And when you think of water extract, you might be thinking of a tea. But when we're working with roots, we really have to do what's called a decoction. And that is where we're actually simmering the roots for anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, because it's so much harder to break down the root material and get all of the constituents out of it. We can't just pour boiling water in. We really need to simmer it in order to break it down. This goes for seeds or barks or anything like that as well. So that's called a decoction, and it's basically just simmering. So once you simmer your roots, why not make them into a lovely syrup? We all think of cough syrup during the winter, and there are many different roots that go into these cough syrups, including some of our favorite ones that don't grow where I live, at least anyway, which is ginger, is a really important root as well. It's more of a rhizome or a tuber or something like that. But that is another important one to have around for the winter time. Now, this is the point in the show where we'd normally be telling you about the flower essence, but we don't have a flower essence because we're not talking about flowers. Now, because burdock is our fall equinox card and plant, I could be talking about the burdock flower essence, but instead I thought, well, let's just talk about, as I often will say, an essence is like the sort of true, the truth of something. And so when we think about roots, most of the roots that we're collecting for um, medicinal use, most of them are these kind of a tap root. Okay, so they're kind of a bigger, fatter root like this. Think of a carrot. That's like a classic tap root. And if you went to the grocery store, you would want to buy a nice, firm, and beautiful and moisture filled root. You wouldn't want to buy sort of a flaccid or dehydrated root. And so when we think about the energetics of roots and the essence of them, it really is, it's a certain amount of strength and an epitome of health. And it's also the foundation of the plant. Without a root, the plant cannot grow. So when we're thinking about sort of the energy of roots, this time of years, we're starting to, we're rooting ourselves down as well for the coming months. Then we can kind of think like a root. Stay moisturized and stay healthy. So with that, I want to share we have two cards for today because as I said, we are returning to the wheel of the year that I drew way back, I think in, gosh, December? Yeah, yeah, it was for winter solstice. So I wanted to share our cards. So the first card is the card of 2022. Now, when last time I shared a Wheel of the Year card, I forgot to talk about hemlock. So hemlock was our sort of overall theme for 2022. And the words on the card were build strong boundaries, a sturdy structure supports abundant growth, own your own authority. And so the theme for this year has been to examine the structures that you have. Do you not have enough? Or are your structures too rigid? And so we're just kind of coming back around to this idea of structures. And structures are things that have strength to them. And the card itself is the Emperor, which is a very strong authority type of figure. And so are you taking ownership of this aspect of your life, of kind of the boundaries and everything that you have going on? And then the second card, of course, is burdock. And again, I already did a show on burdock last year. So that's why I decided to share roots with you in this show. And this is the words from burdock. Burdock says, embrace foe as friend. A lot of people don't like burdock. They don't like the burrs. They don't like the way it invades a field. Tap into nourishment found in the depths. Burdock has a very deep root, and it goes and it brings up tons of nutrients from the lower soil. Let go of control. Lasting change takes time. So in other words, It takes time for the burdock to come in and to rework the soil. It's a great plant to come into a soil that's been compacted and brings a lot of nourishment into it. And I talked a little bit about burdock in general. So, where are we? All right, so we've got these two different things, and both the structures and the foundation, the root foundation. And so this week, these are some really great things to think about. First of all, spend some time if you're interested in doing some root harvesting. Make sure you're going out now and locating the plants so that you know where to go back after the tops die back and be able to harvest your roots. And then remember this sort of essence of the root, which is that there's a strong foundation under the soil that's still going to be there. And sometimes we need to, what is the saying, make like a tree and leaf, right? Sometimes we need to be dropping some seeds and getting rid of these extra things and just go back into our foundation, make sure that our roots and our foundation are healthy so that we too can be healthy and that all of the other things that are the outgrowth of ourselves have this strong foundation to grow on. So this week, just take a look at your own sort of root health, see how you're doing, and make some adjustments. Make sure you're moisturized and strong and you are growing well beneath the soil. So thanks so much for joining me here for another, well, root power this week. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a different show tonight. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And I look forward to seeing you again next week for another, oh, it's going to be another root power, I think. You'll have to be surprised. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.